Welcome to the season ticket, your home team every night. I'm Andrew, your co host, here with my fellow co host, Jibril, and we're here to talk hoops. We have a nice agenda for you guys today, and we're going to go over some things that we think you'll enjoy. Let's start off. This one's near and dear to my heart, the Jimmy Butler, just everything with them. I think this is something personal for both of us. With my boy Jibril being a Bulls fan and me being a Heat fan. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just, as far as him being on a team that I root for, it don't go any more personal than that. But yeah, it's something that's very interesting. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I he's been on the Heat now for a few years, so like the antics and everything, I'm sure you're used to. So
hmm I mean, that's one of the things Wade touched on recently is that he's gotten more preferential superstar treatment than Wade and LeBron had and Bosh had when they were there, than Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway had when they're there. Um, but he wants his money. And the Heat don't pay for past performance. They didn't pay Wade when he was past his prime. I wouldn't expect Pat Riley to pay Jimmy past his prime. Didn't pay Shaq past his prime either. And then when they wanted new pastures, they found new pastures. And just like Wade said, the structure. I think that's one thing Jimmy's gonna miss is the structure and players that want to get better every day, like he does, or at least like he did in previous years. Um, but there's some
I'm,
things. Mhm.
I mean, I'm all for you getting your money, but I just think there's a way to go about it. You know,
Mhm.
like all the antics, like the passive aggressiveness, the
Mhm.
saying stuff about how your boss is supposed to appreciate you and all this. Like to me, is like unnecessary. Like
Mhm.
go out there and hoop, like like I don't know, like this generation, KD, Jimmy Butler, and there's a lot of other ones. It's like they care about what somebody thinks.
Mhm.
Like you should be appreciative of me, or you should consider me this. Like for somebody who hasn't won a title, like why are you sitting up there telling Pat Riley out of all people who he should appreciate? Pat Riley's been on the championship level every level,
Mhm.
college player, as a pro player, as a coach, and as an executive. He's won and lost on every level. So like to be sitting up there not being able to finish seasons, you
Mhm.
know, not being able to be there for your team when they get eliminated by teams, and then sitting up there talking mess in the media, and then talking about how you should be appreciated. Like you in your mid 30s, you're asking for 40, $50 million per year. Like to me, it's just crazy. You know
Mhm.
what you think about it though?
Yeah, think about it, right? So since he's been with Miami, he's played in 58 games, 52 games, 57 games, 64 games, and 60 games. Now, of course, one of those seasons was the bubble season, so there's some differences there. But he tends not to be fully available, and it has affected us in seeding. And the type of player he is, he's not always gonna be playoff Jimmy during the regular season. He's gonna miss games, and then the games he plays, some of them he's just gonna be checked out of, and more focused on playing defense and being a connective hub rather than being the scorer that they need. And this is really the first year where they've had someone who can really handle the load as the primary scorer and the breakout of Tyler Hero. Um, we lose a lot of games because he's just not fully invested, which is why we end up being way better in the playoffs than we are in the regular season. And he kind of learned the hard way this past postseason when he got hurt in the play-in. We shouldn't have even been in the play-in had he played more games. And it's not all injury, Some of them he takes off, some for personal. He takes a lot of games off for personal reasons. and then he also just doesn't try his best every game. And the Heat realize it's just too hard to do. I mean, that run that we had from the play-in to the finals, that's just not something. That's not a situation you want to be in. Clearly, what that showed is that this team was just poorly seeded because of a bad regular season, and it's just unfortunate. So
And the league is too hard. It's too hard to win games to be doing that. To
exactly.
think you could just walk in as the eighth seed and go all the way to the final.
Yeah.
It's possible, but the league is too good. Teams are, it's other pros over there.
Mm-hmm.
So to put yourself behind a gun like that is
Crazy.
unnecessary, and especially to be, like you said, a team that doesn't have a lot of offensive firepower. And, and he's supposed to be that guy that's part of the problem. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
probably touch on it later that you know his role is not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I
And
think the question, Jimmy, is like you said, playoff Jimmy versus regular season Jimmy. The ultimate question is, like, for whatever team he gets traded for, if he gets traded, is he going to show up and be playoff Jimmy, and for how long?
mm-hmm.
Until he gets in an argument with one of the other stars or the coaches, and then what? What is that team going to be doing? That's what the next team has to realistically think about. Because when you look at Minnesota and you look at Philadelphia and now Miami, those are now three different instances where, for whatever reason, you can talk about money or whatever, he got upset and he checked out.
Mm-hmm.
So the question for this new team is that worth the money to gamble
Yep.
like that? That's
Yep.
what he's created, at least from a
Mm-hmm.
spectator. I don't really. I mean, I don't know if GMs are gonna want to gamble on that.
And the assets you have to give up too. Um,
Assets you have to give up. Yeah,
it's definitely something very real to look at. It has major problems. I'm gonna look real quick. Let's see the team that most people talk about being his ideal destination. Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix, Golden
And
State. I think.
yeah, so looking at Phoenix Suns, right? He wants a new contract after this, and Kevin Durant's contract expires in 2 years. So not this season, but the season after his contract expires. Whereas Devin Booker's contract expires in 2028. Um, so I wonder if the calculus here is let's trade for him, give him the extension he wants, set it up till 2028, and then see if that can get Kevin Durant to get an extension until 2028. And then we can at least lock into this team. I don't know if that's really the best option, right? You look at Kevin Durant's age; he's getting up there as well. So
And as
Kevin
good as
Durant's
KD is,
36.
good as KD is, it's different, but it's similar in terms of it's good when it's good, but when it's not on the court, like you have to start looking at the many times the seasons that are ending when a guy
Mm-hmm.
games under 70 games. Well,
Exactly, yeah. And both of them, they're 35 and 36. So you're looking
that's
at something paying them into their 2028 season, right? That's going to be, yeah, 38 and 39. Like,
those
that's,
years. Yeah, and the back would be the most expensive part of the contract.
mm-hmm. And then when you look at poor Booker here will be, he's like nested into his prime, right? So Booker is 28, so he'll be 31. It's gonna be hard. That's gonna be a hard ask. I
It is.
think that's the primary place that he can go. They recently made that trade. They traded a first round pick. They have no control of their first round picks until 2000, I guess 32 will be the first time they have control over their first round picks. They have swaps for the picks that they do have to have. So yeah, it's just an interesting position. But I guess you go all in. There's a few other destinations that he would like that would consider him, but he said that he doesn't want to go there. It looks like it's pretty much Phoenix or bust. I don't know if you saw his most recent antics. So we've seen him wearing the he's had the braids in that have like the purple and orange during some of the games, and now recently his most recent game he wore the Phoenix Suns colorway of his signature shoe. Now, why he even has a Phoenix Suns colorway of his shoe at this point, that's one thing. Um,
It's just real immature.
Very
But
immature. And that's why he got suspended again for another 2 games.
but outside of that, like we talk about the basketball, one thing I think, and we talked about this before, that gets missed on Jimmy Butler, that I happen to have been able to observe being a Bulls fan is this is a case where you have a guy who played himself into a max contract, right?
Yep.
And ever since then, he's been viewed as this player that's supposed to be a 1A.
Mm-hmm.
And when in actuality, Jimmy Butler was always supposed to be Robin.
Yep.
He was a really good Robin. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think he was supposed to be the league's best Robin, like
Mm-hmm.
Scottie Pippen 2.0 or something like that.
But the Clippers
But
thought they were getting him Paul George.
well, I think it happened. What happened before that in Chicago? Derrick Rose, he's coming off the bench while Derrick Rose is in his prime. Derrick Rose gets hurt, and then what happens? Well, you have guys who have to step up, next man mentality with Tom Thibodeau
Mm-hmm.
and that Bulls team back then. So Joakim Noah steps up, becomes Defensive Player of the Year. Jimmy Butler grows up right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And out of necessity, because you know Tibbs cares more about defense, and it's like get it how you live on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler he turns himself into a 24 points a night player and earned himself a max contract. And ever since then, all GMs have looked at him like, oh, that's a 1A player. When
Mm-hmm.
really Jimmy Butler's supposed to be that guy that you kick the ball to once that primary pick and roll breaks down. He's coming off the wing, getting into secondary action, cutting to the ball, offensive rebounds,
Mm-hmm.
thrives in those moments, not creating his own shot when everybody knows he's going to be trying to create the shot. He doesn't excel with that. And so, you know, it's easy to average that high amount of points on a Bulls team and be successful because they were extremely good on defense. Remember Tom Thibodeau, they had the best defenses in the league. So Jimmy Butler averaging 26 with that, yeah, it's going to look like he's the 1A. Then he goes to Minnesota, and you're playing with a team in Minnesota that doesn't have that good of a defense,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, look at what happens. There's turmoil, things don't work out. You go to Philadelphia, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Miami, they got a good defense, but they don't have that offensive punch. So they looking at Jimmy Butler to do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see is him. Forget when he stopped becoming disinterested. Even before then, there would be nights where Jimmy Butler get you 12 points.
Mm-hmm.
Granted he have 10
Very sad.
rebounds, but the thing is, he's not that consistent 25
Dominant
points
score. Yeah.
really. And you know, you can't doubt him. He got his money. You're gonna get your money. But now it's kind of like internally, I think he's realized. I think he's always known it. But now he's like, I'm not gonna be that guy that go and get all these points. I'm not trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go somewhere like Phoenix where KD and D Book can score these points and I can do the dirty work, get the offensive rebounds, leak out on the fast break, do all the stuff that he excels at. But now he wants more, he wants the money that comes with it still. So that's the problem now with the Jimmy Butler thing. I think wherever he goes, he's gonna, ask for that max contract, but he's not gonna be able to be your best player
Yep.
and win a championship, you know? And at this point, it's kind of, like I still think he can be your second best player, but you know, it comes with so much.
No, I agree. And I think I think that's why Miami was pushing to get Damian Lillard in here, because Damian could be on offense, your number one guy, and then have Jimmy and Bam, who's also more of a supplementary player. Um,
Yeah.
it's
See, Bam,
interesting. Hmm.
Bam, and Jimmy, right? They're both the 1B, like the
Yeah, they're
Bravo.
glue guys, and that's the problem. You have two 1Bs, and then you have like I don't know Tyler, who is an offensive like two. I wouldn't even call him a 1B, but he's getting better. But we'll see. And they always kind of hope that he could be the offensive 1A, but defensively not. And it's an interesting thing. It's all I think going to end up leading to him being in Phoenix. We'll see. So I don't know if you heard the most recent thing. Um, Milwaukee's at least showing signs that they aren't interested in Bradley Beal, whereas before everyone was saying he's already agreed to go there and all these things. So things are starting to fall apart. It's interesting where they will end up. I think Bradley Beal does make some sense for Milwaukee in that he's going to give you more than Chris Middleton at this point in his career. Chris Middleton's kind of averaging like 13 points per game. Bradley Beal is averaging about 17 points per game. And I think Bradley Beal, in terms of how he diversifies their offense, would be able to give you a little bit more there too. I mean, right now, Chris Middleton isn't even in the starting lineup. So that just having a guy that can start for you would be a little bit more valuable. And the biggest thing is their contracts all expire around the same time. So Giannis, he has 3 more years. You have Dame with 3 more years. It's not gonna be as big of a deal with them having one more year on him and then missing out on the free agency of 2026, because the contracts they have aren't going to have them in a position where they can participate in that anyway.
Yeah, I mean Milwaukee. Because if I'm a GM and I'm looking at it, I like Bradley Beal and I like his trade value. But like, if I'm building a championship team and he's got to be like one of my best three players, I'm cautious because I like complete players.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm really trying to go get a title, I want some complete players at those positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why Milwaukee is hesitant.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he score more than Middleton, you can't underestimate what Middleton gives to that
Mm-hmm.
team at this point. He's a glue guy. He sets good screens. He plays really good help defense, even
Mm-hmm.
though he's quickest. He's always played like a veteran, even when he first came into the league. So, you know, I don't know. I really don't think Milwaukee's gonna pull that to go to with Bill. You know, I don't see it really.
Oh, I think they'd have to give a first round pick or something to sweeten the pot. Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just don't know where Beal would be able to go. And here's the key things, right? Here's the tea leaves. So if we think about it, the Suns just made this trade for the 3 first round picks. And the Heat suspended Butler. He did miss the plane flight, right? But they also specifically suspended him for 2 games. What that tells me, which is why I was thinking anyway, he's going to be gone in the next. He's not going to make it from this home trip. I've seen some other Heat sources, some true Heat sources say that, like Wes Goldberg and David Ramil, they've also mentioned that they wouldn't expect him to as well. So that's also kind of where I'm leaning. Doesn't seem likely this 2 game suspension's awfully suspicious and that it would get them off this road back when they come back to home. And you can see kind of how it's affecting the other players. It just does not seem ideal. This team, even when they win, just doesn't even look happy. Uh, he's a employee that just doesn't want to be there. That's the best way I put it. He's not happy.
I'm just
Um,
curious, how does you think this looks toward other
it
GMs? Do you
makes
think that
teams not not want to
was he
only.
Does he think they just don't care? Like,
There's only one team that's desperate enough to take him and pay for him, and that's because the Suns are in such a bad position that they have no choice. It's like, well, he's an upgrade over Bradley Beal. His defense would fit in. You wouldn't have to do enough on offense for it to necessarily. He as long as he can be playoff Jimmy at some point during the regular season, that defense and the assists and the rebounds and everything, that's all we really need. So he can kind
I
of
can
hide
see
in the
him being
background.
motivated to be productive in Phoenix if he got there. And then I
Mm-hmm.
think their owner has the personality to go ahead and try to do the move. The biggest question with the Suns and the Heat is if Bill is willing to waive his no trade clause.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think the biggest obstacle is.
Yeah. Otherwise, finding a place where Beal would actually be able to go. There can't be too many places where he'd be willing to.
No, that's the
Milwaukee
thing.
kind
Like,
of also makes sense for another reason. And being from St. Louis, being in the Midwest, a little bit closer to family. Small things. I mean, when you're that wealthy, probably flying anywhere anyway, but that stuff kind of matters.
yeah, he was in DC for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
I keep thinking this is the last thing I really think about. He did get Minnesota. He did manage to improve them in 2 years. I think that was a major improvement. Still the same issues. When he got to Philadelphia, um, one thing I noticed that really interested me, that was probably, you can't say it was the closest because he didn't make the finals. But I think that injured Golden State team on the other side, I think Philly could have won a title had that just went a little bit differently for him. And of course, with Miami, just everyone being hurt, he's come close. I think they could have beat that Golden State team if they managed to get past Boston. That missed three that he took, that would have won the game. Uh,
I
yeah.
mean, he's a good player. He's improved every team that he's been on. Every stop, with the exception of Chicago, it's been a chemistry thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
improved every team. He improved Chicago. He improved the Timberwolves, improved the Sixers and the Heat because he's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. But being good in moments is not good enough to do that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you're not winning championships. That's not good enough to do those antics. Even if you're good enough to improve a team, you haven't improved them enough to win a championship. You haven't done it. You've been to a finals. That's good, but there's been a lot of players who've been in the finals. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So like, I don't know. I just feel like just do what the fuck you're supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully he'll be gone. Honestly, I think we have a lot of great young players. We have guys that play a similar game to him. So I'm all for if we can get Milton or something, wherever we can get Bradley Bill. I'm just happy for. I think the team will be just better without him. Just by
yeah.
not having that cloud of
Yeah.
this darkness over them. Um,
So yeah,
but
that's what I was gonna ask. As a Heat fan, you're ready for him to be gone.
Yep, I'm
Is that
ready for him to be gone. I think there's a few things. The team has a few players between um, Jovic and Jaime Jaquez, which could be great. I always think of Jaquez as a very similar player to Jimmy Butler, but able to run up and down the floor. We've got a guy like um, a guy like Jovic, which really reminds me of a Hito Turkoglu. And then we've got a guy that defensively gives you what Jimmy Butler gives you, and Haywood Highsmith, and is a 40% 3-point shooter. So we have a rotation where we can get a lot of those same things, and I think the team will be fine. The team will grow. Uh, I think it's just better getting him off the team, getting whatever we're gonna get for him. Hopefully, some guys that can come in right away. Because the big thing is we don't want to rebuild. Our pick this year Our pick this year, if we don't make the playoffs, we end up having to give up two unprotected picks because this pick is protected, playoff protected. If it goes this year, we just get more control over our destiny. We have another pick 2 years from now that's owed to Charlotte in the Terry Rozier trade, which is not looking good in retrospect. So yeah, I was saying it's important that we make the playoffs at all costs. So we need to get some win now pieces that have expiring deals so that we can rebuild for the 2026. When I think we'll most likely end up getting De'Aaron Fox. To be real, I know they say Luka Doncic is available. There's a lot of other guys. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is available, but the one we have the most connection to, being another Kentucky guy and someone who Bam was a groomsman in his wedding. We had that relationship there. So that's what I expect we're going to end up getting, if not trading some of these expiring contracts and the picks we'll get from this deal for him a little bit earlier. So, all in all, just looking forward to
Yeah.
making. Uh huh.
Yeah, starting over. I feel you. I don't think a lot of big names is gonna move this deadline. I think a lot of some picks, some assets, and
Yeah.
small role players.
Key ones to
Um,
look out for: Michael Porter Jr., Zach Levine, and Nikola Vucevic.
who do you think Denver would move Michael Porter Jr. for?
They've been talking on and off about a Michael Porter Jr. for Zach Levine deal for probably the last since the
Oh
start
no,
of the season.
I would not do that.
Mm-hmm.
I would not do that. Porter hasn't had problems with injury for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Lavine's still off and on. Plus, Porter he does more things.
Yeah,
Levine can get hot any given night, but it's like, okay, that's it.
I
Porter gets
wonder.
rebounds, he defends.
I wonder if some of that talk's starting to go away because of Russell just breaking out. I think Russell's breakout kind of changes things as well too. Because
Westbrook,
now
yeah.
there's not really a slot for Levine. 'Cause Levine's, I mean, I think he's playing the three right now in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Last I looked at their depth chart, but that's only by necessity. I think it makes more sense to keep. Uh, you would rather have a 6'10" three than a 6'5" three. Even though he does give you more ball creation, maybe they're worried a little bit. Have three ball or have four people that can really create compared to your 6'10" spot up shooter.
All right, so let's kick it to this topic here. Like, let's talk about who's really contending against Boston in the East and who's a pretender.
Yeah.
If I'll go first on this one. So, as far as the real contenders in the East, now we're not talking about the Celtics since they're the defending champs. We're talking about who's going to contend.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, for me, it's between New York and Milwaukee. I know Cleveland has the best record in the conference, best record in the league, but I still don't believe in Cleveland. I like Evan Mobley. I don't really believe in Donovan Mitchell like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, even Garland. I do like Allen and the rest of the team and the coach. But I think the real contenders, New York and Milwaukee, and it's tough to split between the two because it's like, damn, you really don't know which version of. You know, the Knicks are going to be consistent, but with them, they're an injury away. Trust me, I know. With Tibbs, you're an injury away because everybody's playing 38 minutes a night. So I would probably just roll with the Knicks because they got a lot of depth. But yeah, who you got though as far as contending with the Celtics?
Okay, so I'm thinking, right? If we just look at the standings today, they would have the Orlando Magic Or
I
no,
forget
the
Orlando.
Celtics would have to go through the Pistons in the first round. Then in the second round, they would have to go through the New York Knicks, and in the third round, they'd have to go through the Cleveland Cavaliers. Um, I think it's
Standings are pretty tight though right now.
Huh? Yeah, the standings are pretty tight. I think the key things they have to worry about. There's a lot of teams that can defend against them. Like the Orlando Magic, in terms of like a defense, I think can be a problem. Just a team that could knock them off and upset them in the sense that they're not fully healthy, so they're
Yeah.
kind of like a sneaky one of those teams that can just knock you off when you're not prepared. I think the Knicks match up really interesting against them because you think about um, Towns, who's much more motivated versus Porzingis. You think about just all of their wing defenders and Brunson. I think the Knicks, as they continue to gel, are a major problem. They've got OG that they can put on
Either one.
Tatum, either
Either
one.
one.
They've got
And
Bridges that they can put on either one. They've
yeah.
got Brunson, who's just gonna give them fits offensively, and they're just gonna have a really hard time dealing with Towns. I think that is just in terms of how they match up. The Knicks are gonna be a major problem for them. I think Cleveland. It's interesting, right? They have the best team to match up against Cleveland because they do have two bigs, so they can actually they can play big with them the whole time. I think that's probably the most interesting thing about the matchup. They can play big the whole time. They have the wings, right? If we look at Cleveland's depth chart real quick, um, they have the bigs to match up, and then you're gonna put probably Mobley on one. You probably put Mobley on one of either Tatum or Brown. And the other problem is you have like Dean Wade. Uh, they just don't have the two wing combo that you need to match up with them well. Whereas they have guards that can match up pretty well, and they have Holiday and White that they can put on Garland and Mitchell. Uh, so in terms of that, I think it does favor. I think the Celtics do match up pretty well against Cleveland, even though they can both play. They can both play big. You just bring Horford in there, and it's just gonna be a.
I
I
like the
agree with you.
Cleveland. Yeah, I agree with you. I like the Cleveland bigs. I like their depth. The thing I don't like about Cleveland is the top end. I don't think their top end can really be consistent as Boston's top players.
Mm-hmm.
Their depth and their bigs, but and then yeah, the Knicks. But I forgot about Orlando. When Orlando gets healthy, Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner, when they get healthy
Mm-hmm.
together, that's my dark horse in the East.
Just looking at their lineup, right? That's a team that matches perfectly with them. You've got the two wings. You've got Wagner. You got Benchero. You got wings off the bench that can also match up. You got De Silva. You've got Isaac. Like they're always gonna have people that they can throw. It's gonna be a little torture chamber for Tatum and Brown. You've got a big, and then they can also match up. They can match up big also against Horford. They can match up big um, against Porzingis. They have a center that does his job very effectively, and they've got guards that will make it's probably the worst possible early round matchup for the Celtics. That's a team that can take the Celtics out in the first round if they're not careful. They want that. They probably want. They want to be as far away on the bracket from Orlando and New York. I think as long as Boston does that and hopes one of them takes the other out, they can be pretty good.
Yeah.
What do you think about the
All right.
Pistons? We'll talk about them a little bit more in terms of surprises. But I'm
Yeah.
starting to think the Pistons are a team that can knock somebody off too.
Uh, yeah. Before we get there, let's kick it to the West real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So Dallas made it to the Western Conference Finals. Well, they won the Western Conference last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're in seventh currently, and they are extremely injured,
Oh, they're in.
including
Yeah, Todd seventh.
their
Yeah.
best player. So we're just gonna talk in general about the Western Conference as far as
Mm-hmm.
contenders and players. I think the obvious one here is as far as contenders is Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
They look head and shoulders so far above the rest of the West in terms of depth. They have an MVP candidate. They have a Coach of the Year candidate. They just look really good, blowing teams out. Chemistry looks high. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at this point, it's hard to not say that they are the contender in the West. For me, as far as pretenders, it's interesting right now because you have a team that's second that didn't make the playoffs last year, didn't make the
Mm-hmm.
play-in, and you got Memphis, a team that didn't make it, but they're healthy again.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the former champion four. So it's like when you say who is a pretender, well, all of these teams have been there or haven't been there. To
Mm-hmm.
me, I don't really think Houston is a pretender. They play hard. They play hard defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like they may not make it into the late rounds, but
They could knock
they're
somebody off.
they can knock somebody out. They're gonna be a tough first round. So I don't think they're pretenders. For me
Yeah.
right now, I'm gonna say the pretender, and this might get a lot of people, but I'm gonna say Memphis. Memphis is a good team. Memphis is gonna be a tough out. But I don't know if Memphis is quite good enough that top end. I don't know if Ja Morant and Jalen uh Jaren Jackson. I don't know right now if they are good enough to beat SGA, Jalen Williams, or Nikola Jokic and his crew. Or if LeBron were to get there, if Luka and Kyrie were to get there, I don't think they're good enough yet to beat them. I like their
Mm-hmm.
depth, but when it gets to that deep end of the pool, they're gonna have to show up and be really good. And I think they need to go through a stage of maybe defeat at that conference level before they're ready to go. So I'm gonna say they're the pretenders right now, with Oklahoma City being the contenders.
Yeah. When I look, this is why if I'm Memphis, I might just risk it all and trade for Jimmy Butler. Like when you look at what are they missing, right? They have a center who's really just still growing. He has to find a way to stay out of foul trouble in Edie. And I think if he continues to develop, they'll be in a much better spot. And then the other big problem, they're just really relying on this young player in Jalen Wells at the small forward. They have great guards. They have guards off the bench and Sky Pippen Jr. and Luke Kennard that can give them a lot. Uh, of course, they have a former Defensive Player of the Year at the four, which is allowing E to grow. But they're just missing a teeny bit when I think about the more complete teams in the league, like the
They're
Oklahoma
missing.
City Thunder. They're missing. They just need a little bit more at the small forward. It's the same thing that I was telling you about Cleveland, right? The league, what dictates the teams is having that dominant three player, that dominant three. You really need a wing player that can do a lot for you offensively and defensively. And that's why I think they're typically the most valuable players in the league. We're having a resurgence in centers, but you think guys like Durant in his prime, guys like Kawhi in their prime, guys like LeBron. Those are the 1As, Luca. Those are the
Yeah.
things that you kind of really want. Oklahoma City
Yeah.
Thunder, they have that really in their point guard. Their point guard's huge. Um,
I
Jalen.
mean, I think teams can still make it work. I mean, if you got the right pieces, look at Steph.
Mm-hmm.
I think Memphis is missing a pure scorer. Ja Morant is a dynamic player. He's not a pure scorer. It's kind of hard for him to get close to 30 points a night. Jaren Jackson is, like you said, defensive uh, candidate of the year, defensive player of the year candidate. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have a pure scorer. Those are the two best players. And it's not that easy for them to go get 25 every night. Morant does it easily in the regular season,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about the playoffs. That's when scoring for him gets hard. and he gets banged up because
Mm-hmm.
scoring 30 points means going to the rim a
Rim,
lot.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He in the playoffs, you're right. That player you're talking about, I just don't think he necessarily needs to be a 3. He can be a 1 or 2 or a 3. But you're right. You need that player that can be dynamic, shooting off the dribble,
Mm-hmm.
able to run pick and roll. But that off the dribble part is where Morant has got to get better. He
Mm-hmm.
has to get better at shooting off the dribble, shooting from 3, because right now it's too easy to kind of pack the paint on him. And
Mm-hmm.
then if Bane isn't getting off, then that's where Memphis kind of runs into trouble, I think, in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. But yeah, man, I agree. I
I,
agree as far as them, missing something. I just think it's the scoring. Cause, what do you think about that the baby on the team?
about Gigi
Think
Jackson.
yeah, him and Morant just had their first game together. Their first game.
Yeah, I
And
think Gigi Jackson is their future. Um, it just really depends on when. I mean, they're a young team. I think 2, 3 years from now, as they flesh out, as Edie becomes, I mean, I still really believe in Edie. I think as he
yeah.
gets better, I think, like you said, Wells is young, so they're starting small forward. As he becomes better, they could do a win now. What I would say more in regards to Jimmy Butler is he can shore them up to make a deep run this year, whereas they'll be able to make deep runs. They keep. I'm
And see,
not worried about that at all.
that's the thing. If you're a GM, do I want to and Steph hit on this. Do I want to risk my future to try to win now
Mm-hmm.
when that could be a potential like infection in my locker room?
Very
You know what
true.
I mean?
I
Memphis
think
has a strong culture right now. They like the Thunder, but a little older, a little bit more mature, a little more subtle. That's a good culture though. Do you really want to inject something like that into your locker room? Like it's hard, you know.
I just don't see. I think the reason why, if I'm Jimmy Butler, I really don't want to go there. I think of all the shenanigans that you get with John Morant in the past, I just don't see those two clicking very well.
I don't see Jimmy playing in Memphis in that
Yeah,
market.
I think it's specifically like from a player chemistry standpoint. I think the type of guy that Jimmy is when he's locked in is not the type of guy that fits in the Memphis culture.
Yeah, and it's gonna be enough. It's gonna be some more of that same problem.
Hmm.
They're gonna need a pure scorer, and
Yeah,
he's not gonna be that, and it's gonna be the same problems.
I
He's got to
think.
go where there's a bona fide scorer. Phoenix if it works, or Golden State if it works. Somewhere
Hmm.
it's unquestioned they are the go to scorer, not Jimmy.
Yeah. I think Shaq recently spoke about why he thinks Golden State would be the perfect fit for him. Jimmy loves getting into the lane and kicking it out to 3 point shooters. He loves passing up, which should be an easy 2 for a good 3. And I think Golden State will give him tons of that. That's probably really his perfect fit. Um, the question is, how do him and Draymond, as long as they mesh well, you can't have a Draymond Durant moment. Like that's explosive. That's the thing that you wonder that can literally end your franchise having it
Yeah,
between those two guys.
yeah. And I think Golden State is very much thinking about their culture,
Mhm.
especially with a guy like Steph. Like they probably really believe in that and buy into that. So
Yeah, but
I
I
would
think
be,
it could be really good. Um, I think when you have a guy like playoff Jimmy, you think of what they really do best, right? So the difference between them having Harrison Barnes and having Durant there was night and day. They can run this offense, and then when they need an ISO guy, they could go Durant. I think even though Jimmy's not going to be that ISO guy for the 3, Jimmy is a good ISO mid range jumper type player who can play outside of the flow of an offense and then can play within the offense, the distributor too. I think he gives you someone that you can have and they had just similar things. You go from Hero and Duncan Robinson to um to Curry and Buddy Hield. And then you go from your connecting hub being Bam and also your defensive fixer being Bam to that being um Draymond Green. I think honestly, it's the most seamless fit that he could have. I think it would be a really good spot for him if he wants to, and if he can buy into the culture. We see guys like Andre Iguodala talk about what it was like playing for both. Spo's much more disciplined, and Kerr's much more relaxed, but they achieve the same results. So I think that would honestly be the perfect fit for him. I think there's a lot of teams in the West that I think can come out because you think of just the disciplined champions you have on those teams. Joker and having a guy like I think the emergence of Westbrook can really make them more and more dangerous as they keep going. I think as Kawhi's coming back, they've been in fifth place without Kawhi even being there. I think that's a team that can really make a move. I don't really believe in the Lakers right now, but I think also the Timberwolves are the type of team that could upset somebody. It shouldn't work, but I think the way Anthony Edwards is playing out of his mind, Anthony Edwards, as he's continued to develop his game, is just insane. Uh,
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do pleasant surprises and disappointments. For the Eastern Conference, I think we're gonna probably agree on this one. My pleasant surprise is gonna, be Detroit.
mm-hmm.
I can't say that I'm really surprised though, because I felt like this is the natural progression. Kay Cunningham had a good year last year. You can see him progressing. Jalen Duran, I had him on fantasy, so I knew his production. And I think they were a little impatient with Monty Williams. They got JB Bickerstaff, who hasn't forgotten our coach, still a good coach. So I'm not surprised that they're progressing like they are. They got some good veterans on the team. So they just doing their thing, but it is a
Mm-hmm.
pleasant surprise to see the Detroit Pistons back in the mix. So I'm gonna say Detroit, and then
Yep.
for disappointment, I think it's or you want to go with your surprise? You want to talk about yours first before we do the
Um,
disappointment?
sure, and I totally agree with you on Detroit. Like you look at their team, the arrival. I mean, Cade Cunningham has consistently been just showing how good he is. You got guys like Jalen Duran, who came in. I think he was in college, what would have been his high school senior year. So when you have a player that young, guys like Oscar Thompson, you have these defensive guys who can switch everything. I think Jalen Duran reminds me a lot of Bam, in that he can just kind of switch everything. He's a lockdown defender. You got guys; they just have a lot of size and they have a lot of scoring. They have good distribution. Young team, very just pleased to see them continue to develop because it seemed like that rebuild was taking longer than it should have.
Yeah,
When you look at the
and then
talent that they had.
those veterans, Beasley,
Mm-hmm. Hardaway.
Hardaway, and Tobias Harris, kind of
Mm-hmm.
anchoring them down.
Yeah, no, I
Yep,
think that's a great idea. Honestly, very similar to Houston. Very similar to Houston, a good mix of young guys and
and
for sure
veterans.
players and vets.
Funny because they got the twins too.
mm-hmm.
So with the disappointment, I think the obvious answer here is Philadelphia, and you know, for so many reasons. This team's supposed to be continuing the process, supposed to be, knocking on that door or at the finals. And not only are they not, in the top 3 or 4, they're not in the play-in spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have guys playing. You don't even have guys on the
Yeah.
basketball court, and we're almost halfway through the season. I think it's crazy that Maxi, Paul George, and Embiid at this point, I think 2 games together or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
And you look at just their contracts, right? How long they're locked in to this team. They've got these guys for a while. Um,
Yeah, they are screwed because I'm gonna tell you right now, being a guy that rooted for the Clippers, Paul George ain't it. He can be the thing about it. If they were healthy, I would be interested because
mm-hmm.
I think he can be your third best player. And that's what he would be with Maxey and Embiid playing. But they haven't even been healthy.
They're
Like
locked
we,
into this roster until 2028. So Maxi doesn't go off the books until 2029. Depending on Embiid, Embiid will probably opt out at some point, but he's got 67 million on an option for that 2028-2029 season. And then Paul George is definitely going to take that 57 million for the 2027-2028 team. So this roster is what you have. Your biggest thing that you're going to look for is improvement from Jared McCain. If Jared McCain continues to develop into a key piece for them, um,
he is.
and
He's been their most consistent player.
mm-hmm. But he's hurt now, right? He's out for a good amount. Yeah,
Yeah, but early on he was like their
he's
most
yeah.
consistent player.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they got a bright spot in him, but dang, like, and I like Maxey, but man, Embiid is becoming a huge question mark, and Paul George, I don't know, man. If I'm a GM, I don't want him on my team right now because you and I can do this, but we're not playing professional basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I got a guy in season running a podcast talking about his peers while he's supposed to be playing, like to me that bothers
It's
me.
gotta be so frustrating. Yeah.
Like, come on, dude. Like, how can I trust that you locked in with us on this journey through our season when you're sitting here analyzing and talking about your peers and you're on a podcast? Like, I don't know. To me, I don't see how that works.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting, right? Because you saw things like that in football with the different players that are TikTokers. Is Terry McCain's a TikToker, right? Where he is he the one that's a TikToker?
you said McCain
Yeah, I'm
for the
pretty
Sixers?
sure. Let me pull it up real quick.
Yeah, and like Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe were doing it for the Crimson Tide. I just don't like it. You got Michael Parsons, on the Cowboys.
Yeah,
It's
Jerry
just
McCain,
crazy.
4.6 million followers on TikTok. Yeah,
Yeah,
he does all the little challenges and stuff.
I don't really
Maybe
care.
that'll work. You got Twitter troll and Joel Embiid. You've got the TikToker and Jerry McCain, and then you got the podcaster and Pandemic P. So,
Yeah,
and,
the Twitter and the TikTok. I'm talking about podcasts where it's not so much that they're on social media. It's the fact that you're
you gotta
analyzing.
watch those games and take time out of what you could be using to help the team. Focus
Yeah,
on your. He's focusing. It's kind of like what people were saying about Travis Kelsey. Um, are you focusing on your off season
getting
or your retirement? Are you focused on your retirement while you're still playing? I
right.
think right? You remember a personal story. Uh, Working, we had this teammate when we were working that was taking Spanish classes, focusing on their retirement, while we're over here trying to fill out tickets. Who shan't be named, but it gets on you. It makes it harder for you to perform when someone's already focusing on what they're doing after they leave,
Yeah,
while you're still
I
going
mean,
through it.
just being an ultimate competitor. Like I don't even play pro basketball, but I'm super competitive. If I know
Mm-hmm.
my teammate is running a podcast while we in the season, sitting up here talking about these teams we playing, like he sitting there like he an analyst. Like that's gonna piss me off. Like because the next time, like I feel like you're not busting your butt the same way I am. Like I'm gonna be thinking about you on that podcast.
Nah, I get what you mean.
Because
uh,
it's different if Paul George we knew was an ultimate hustler, but we seen Paul George get frustrated when he don't get calls and then just check out of the game. But you
mhm.
want to do a podcast though,
And when you look
like
at how
come
much he's getting paid, people would think, right?
yeah,
Paul George is making almost as much as Embiid. Embiid made 51 million this year. Paul George made 49 million this year.
now can you tell me why Paul George makes that much money other
Um,
than
Open market.
other than teams can afford to do it and somebody gonna do it?
And you think, right? I think Paul George is a big reason why Jimmy Butler's upset. You've got Jimmy saying, "Look, they're paying Pandemic P, who's done nothing in the playoffs, 50 million a year for the next 4 years. He's just as old as me. I want 50 million for the next 4 years." I understand why when you see the next guy doing something like that, you're like, "I want that." Same thing with James Harden, right? James Harden and Kawhi just re-up deals, and he's like, "You think I'm unavailable? Look at Kawhi, how unavailable he is, and then look at a guy like James Harden who also hasn't done very much in the playoffs." So I get when your peers, what the Heat are saying is those are bad franchises. Those are bad. That's bad management. Those are bad business decisions. Yes, there are players who are making the money that you can earn somewhere. There is a bad team out there that is badly run who will give you that money. And it looks like they are in the desert right now, just itching,
Right.
as seen by the 60 million they're paying for the corpse of Bradley Beal right now.
I don't know, man. Like at some point, I don't know what GM is going to be, but somebody's going to realize, hey, these traditional ways we've been structuring these contracts is not going to work. Specifically, when you start getting old, when these players start getting older, because
Mm-hmm.
traditionally the contract has gotten higher and higher as the players gotten older.
Yeah, it's by
But when
years
you think,
played it determines your max.
yeah, but man, you can be paying guys like Chris Paul $50 million,
But
guys
that's
who
where the other end of the spectrum is, right? You look at a guy like Chris Paul, and Chris Paul is making checks. No.
well, yeah, now,
Mm-hmm.
but I think Chris Paul kind of woke up and was like, "Damn, if I want to try to win, I can't be drawing this much money."
Mm-hmm.
Other guys need to start thinking like that earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jimmy Butler probably should be not trying to look for that much money if he wants to win.
Yeah, he'd
But
be make
the
30 million a
priority
year. You could build more around him. He's still getting
could
paid.
could, but you see, he don't want to win that much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if guys think like I don't know.
Yeah.
He can't
Also,
couldn't possibly think he can be. I don't know.
mm-hmm.
What are you gonna say?
I want to give one more surprise. The surprise that I think you
First,
already know where I'm going. I've got two Heat surprises I want to go with. One of them is the emergence of Kal'el Ware. Kal'el Ware played G League games this year. And if we're going back to his recent games, he had 20 points, 15 rebounds, and shot 33% from three, 2 for 6 against Portland. He had 25 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a three against San Antonio. Talking about a guy that had 8 points and 11 rebounds against the Lakers, 19 points, 13 rebounds against the Clippers. We're going back just in recent games. 25 points against Indiana. Like, he is broken out. He has broken out recently. And
yeah,
like I said, you're talking about a young player, 20 years old, 7 foot 230. He has been a very pleasant surprise, and now that we're able to move Bam to his Olympic position, the power forward. One other guy, I'm definitely we'll talk about him a little bit more in the All Star, but Tyler Hero is averaging 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 41% from three and 48% off the dribble, 4 makes a game. I think he's finally broken out, and just two things I wanted to really give a little bit of hope towards.
yeah. I got a chance to see Kal'el Ware a couple of weeks ago and a few times this year, and yeah, he's breaking out. He gonna be a good player. Very versatile. He's got the height and the length at 7 feet. He's like it's funny he's saying miniature guy. He's like a miniature Wembanyama. He can shoot
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
three. He defends when he's down there. Got good IQ to be a young player. So yeah, I'm excited to see him continue to improve. Tyler Hero, in my opinion, is doing what he's already supposed to be doing. Injuries have always plagued him. but I already knew Tyler Hero had it in him, so and continue to just stay healthy. So we can see, where his ceiling is because I really believe in Hero's game.
Yeah.
Kicking it to the West real quick, the pleasant surprise for me, I'm gonna do it in reverse this time. I'm gonna go with the disappointment, and I got two of them. One is with the team, and one is with players. With the team, I'm gonna go with Minnesota.
I knew it. Preach.
Extreme. And I wish we would have started this earlier so I could have talked about how bad this trade was before it went down and right after it went down. Because every single day is passing, it's starting to look more and more obvious how bad it was.
Oh yeah.
But I was totally against this trade.
You were.
I thought Minnesota should have made a trade. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think trading for Julius Randle was the answer. In fact, I think that's probably one of the worst trades they could have made because
it didn't make sense for that team.
No, in my opinion, Julius Randle is a poor man's Karl-Anthony Towns. Every flaw that he has, there's similar flaws and they got similar strengths. But Karl-Anthony Towns does everything that Julius Randle does better. He shoots better than him. He can get his shot better than him. He plays better defense. He rebounds. He's better than him at everything. The problems that Minnesota had with Karl-Anthony Towns is he would make poor decisions late down the stretch. Specifically, he would either take poor shots or get offensive fouls trying to charge into the lane and stuff like that. So now you have Julius Randle, who you can't even get to try to get the ball down the end of the game. Not when the defense is tight. He's shying away from it. Watching Minnesota play is so frustrating. The reason why Anthony Edwards is catching so many double teams right now is because teams are finding out Julius Randle, all he wants to do is stand around a three-point line and wait for you to kick him the ball so he can take a jump shot, either on the three-point line or somewhere right inside the three-point line. He's not nowhere near as interested as Karl-Anthony Towns was in setting screens and getting rebounds. Just watch it next time you watch. And so now, it's frustrating just seeing them be at the Western Conference finals and now, in ninth position. And it doesn't look like, they're just about to turn it around and get on a run. It looks like every single night it's a win or lose for them. So that's been frustrating for them. And then the second one is the Pelicans. Not really as far as the team, a little bit with the team. They got rid of Najee. They got rid of some guys I thought were very instrumental. Dyson Daniels and Najee Marshall. I know they couldn't keep everybody, but those are two guys I probably would have tried to keep. Zion not being on the court, Brandon Ingram not being on the court. They've probably been the most injured team through the season until this point. So that's just been frustrating because I think we all know how good the Pelicans could have been. We saw how good they were when they were all clicking. So those have been two disappointments for me.
Gives me a thought also. Brandon Ingram is going to be a free agent this year. There's only two places he can go. He can make it over to the Nets. The Nets have $40 million cap space. Or he can end up, if Houston declines their option on Fred VanVleet, they can pick him up. I think he's probably the most impactful free agent that will be available. I'm curious how that's going to turn out. He's another guy that will probably get paid because of the market. But there's also not a lot of people that have the money. So unless it's a sign and trade, he's the type of guy you could see in a sign and trade possibly. But that's the one that I'm probably most interested in. It's weird because they just made a win now move in getting Dejounte Murray. But I just don't see how they're ever gonna be fully healthy with this build. And I mean, there's sometimes there's failed rebuilds. I think this is a failed rebuild. Zion, you probably just try and flip Zion and flip Ingram at the deadline and see what you can do. But it's literally a lesser scale of what went on or what we're seeing in real time with Phoenix. You have a team that is going win now, younger win now team, but with such injury issues, it's kind of like the same thing. Do you want to max these guys out and pay them and hope that you get that one season where they're all healthy? Or do you just give up and start a new rebuild? And it all kind of starts with Zion. Zion is not in shape enough. He's always hurt. Um, Getting into scandals, you can see his mind is not on basketball. You got to figure out where you can trade him and hopefully he ends up somewhere with more discipline. I do think if he's healthier and more in shape, you'll cut down on some of those injuries too.
Yeah. As far as a pleasant surprise in the West, I really don't have one. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to go with the Clippers, man. I'm really not surprised because I believe in Ty Lue. I believe he's a top coach in the league. So I'm not surprised that he's doing a lot with a little. And we got Jeff Van Gundy as far as assistants. Jeff Van Gundy, one of my favorite basketball minds. I'm not surprised at all that they doing a lot with a little. But to be fifth, and Kawhi just now coming back, James Harden. The surprise is that James Harden just holding it down. He's in a big market. It's not the Lakers, but it's still in LA, and he just holding it down with that team. Norman Powell, I knew he had it in him, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so good to see him stepping up again, being consistent, playing like an all-star. Zubac doing his thing. I've seen all these players do this, but again, to have a fifth seed record at this point is pretty cool, I guess. So I think that's my surprise, my pleasant surprise in the West. It would be the Clippers being in fifth with Kawhi just now coming back here at the end of June. I mean, at the end of January.
No, I think that's awesome. I would
Yeah.
say I completely agree with you. What the Clippers are doing is great. It actually really reminds me of when Doc was with the Clippers and they took some of those young, spunky teams. Remember the Tobias Harris build that managed with the Shaga against Alexander as a rookie? That
Mm-hmm.
team, it really reminds me. It's kind of just Clippers culture now, I guess, overachieving. Um, Team
It's
that,
interesting. I was gonna say this team is funny because they remind me of that 2019 Raptors team.
mhm.
You know, had some veterans on there, some key pieces that was able to hold it down. I don't think they have a guy that is as good as Siakam was playing, but they remind me of that. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
No, I definitely agree. I think, and we'll see how all the roles change as Kawhi gets fully back in. I think some of the stuff that really surprises me pleasantly, um, really surprised with the return of Russell Westbrook. He's
oh yeah,
back. He's back, and I'm very excited to see that. I'm very disappointed in this Phoenix Suns build. Right now, they're not even in the playoffs, and they've mortgaged almost their entire future, and they're trying to mortgage more of it. So, I still think trading DeAndre Ayton was probably a bad decision because now they have Nurkic, who's I really think if you let Frank Vogel before he got fired, if with you let him work with Aiton, I really think Aiton was more of a coaching issue. I think Lonnie Williams is a guy that really likes his guys and really dislikes the guys that aren't his guys. And I think a different coaching environment, new ownership, would have been something where he could potentially got more out of that guy. Also, just kind of what the franchise put him through. Always when he was playing well, not willing to pay him for it. Finally paying him for it as he was looking to go somewhere else by matching. Just all around bad. I'm disappointed with Golden State. I know a lot of it's injuries, but I really want to see them get one more. You're balancing the future, but then if you're balancing the future, maybe see what you can get See if you can get a crazy haul for Steph and Draymond. I think about some of these like these deals, right? I think back to the Boston deal. The Boston deal is probably the best example of that, where they trade the corpse of Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett for the picks that eventually became Marcus Smart, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. See what things you can get if you're going to tear this team down and give them one last chance to make a run. Um, Unless you're going to go win now. You got to kind of pick and choose. This two timeline thing, just pick one. That's why I feel. I think that. What I was gonna say one more. I'm the coaching change. Some of the coaching changes. I think Sacramento Kings are really responding to their new coach.
Yeah.
I'm really still disappointed in them for firing Mike Brown. I think they still have more they could get out of him. And I think the Lakers. I'm kind of this team's really streaky, so it's hard to say for sure. But I don't know how I feel about JJ Redick just yet. There was a lot of hype around him as a coach that was gonna fix everything. They still have a lot of the same problems that they had before you got there. Is he a good coach or a bad coach? I can't say for sure. But one thing is for sure, I don't think the last coach was necessarily the problem. I think it's more roster issues more than anything, and getting a team to be motivated every night. I think that's more of the issue. I'm really pleasantly surprised by the Spurs. I think the Spurs are knocking on the door for the playoffs. I think Wemby might be a top 10 player in the league already. I don't know if people should say they're surprised because everyone's like Wemby is the second coming, but it's just cool to see him here.
I was a big Spurs watcher, well, been since 2013, but um, last year I thought they were gonna knock on the door in the play in, and they didn't get close. And this year, they only at 12th. They're right there, like 7 through 12 right now is like a 1-2 games.
Mm-hmm.
But watching the games, they're never out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the execution at the end of the games that Chris Paul has been helping with that. A guy that I don't know if people know much about him yet, but I mean, obviously he just signed a huge contract last year. But Devin Vassell, I think is a real corner piece, a guy
Mm-hmm.
that they build on. He and Wemby are going to be that 1-2 piece. And now they got Castle. Castle is going to be a really good role player for them. I think
Mm-hmm.
so. Now that they got them a core like that, they got Wemby, they got Sochan, Vassell, Castle. I'm a big fan of the Spurs going forward. You just looking for the execution down the stretch, particularly from Vassell and Wemby. Can they make those smart decisions down the end of at the end of the games?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up real quick by talking about who are some guys we hoping make the All-Star team. We know it's only gonna have 12 players, so we know a lot of these guys that are deserving may not make it. So I'll start real quick on the West. Um, because we know guys like SGA, Ja, Ant, Steph, KD, LeBron, all them might get first, those first spots. Guys like J-Dub from OKC this year. It might fill
Mm-hmm.
up pretty quick, but one guy I'm hoping makes the All-Star team this year is Norman Powell. We talked
Yep,
about
I
the
was gonna say
Clippers.
the same thing. Norman Powell.
Yeah, we talked about the Clippers, and Norman Powell is one of the big reasons they here in fifth. Um,
Wemby too.
after
Wemby,
that,
I want to say.
yeah, yeah, Wemby. So those are two guys. I'm hoping that we see in the All Star game. Norman Powell averaging just under 24 points a game this year. Just balling for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
He deserves it. He deserves it.
he's a certified dog in my opinion. Norman Powell is a guy you can throw out there. You need him to go play 40, 45 minutes. he'll go do it. You need him to go guard the other team's best player, he'll do it. You need him to score. Like he's somebody that you can go to, and I think Kawhi really knows that. Obviously, Toronto, and now he playing with him in L.A. Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the guy for the West, and then who you got for the West? You just said Wemby, Norman
Yeah,
Powell.
Wemby, Norman Powell. I'd say Anthony Edwards is probably my favorite for possible All Star MVP.
Oh, it's MVPs. Yeah,
Um, I mean, I know we haven't seen the teams yet, but that's the guy that I think. It always says who's determined to do it, and then who can has the scoring ability for that type of thing. I think it's him. The guy that I really don't want in
yeah.
the he's messing up everything is Lamelo Ball. Lamelo
Oh,
Ball he is a paper warrior this year. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but he is a paper warrior.
you saying he getting empty calories?
He is beyond getting empty calories, and they're very inefficient as well. So if we look at his stats, right? So LaMelo Ball is second in 3 points made with 4.3. Now he also is fourth in points per game with 29.3, eighth in assists with 7.6. He's shooting 42% from the field, and then from three, he is shooting 33.5%. You should not be taking 12.8 threes per game if you're making 33.5% from three. Empty calories, 42%, wildly inefficient paper calories.
And he's super popular, so
Super popular.
It looks like he's going to make the team based
I
on
really
that.
hope he just doesn't get players voting. I hope the other things can push him out of starting because he would not get a coach's vote. I'm pretty sure. I couldn't imagine him getting in through the coaches.
So it's all setting up for the guy who you think should get it there, Tyler Hero, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think Tyler Hero. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of guys from the Cavs that are deserving. I don't know if you give them like 3 or 4. I mean, like really, they have like 4 guys that can get it. I don't know how many you actually give them. Probably 2 or 3. Definitely 2. Possibly 3. Tyler Hero, I think, should get in this year. Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, I think a lot of these guys on TV, maybe some of these, like I get it, winning matters, and it should definitely have weight. But I think in some of these awards and some of these voting processes, it's starting to get a little bit too much weight. I mean, basketball
I think so
team
too.
sports.
Remember Atlanta, their whole starting lineup made that one year?
Yeah.
Kyle Korver got all-star appearance.
Yeah. I mean, the team sport, the best team wins the championship. They get awarded the Larry O'Brien and championship rings. They go down as champions. These all-star positions, these MVPs, these all-team selections, yeah, winning matters, but they're still individual awards. They're still individual accolades. So while I don't think that empty calories in a losing effort should be awarded, like 13th in the conference, like you said, shooting 33%. But if you balling out and your team is 8th or 6th, then you should definitely be on there ahead of third in line on the best team just because they have the best record.
I agree. And that's my
with
argument for Tyler Hero right there.
Yeah. With that being said, I know he was hurt a lot, and that's maybe one of the things that may keep him out. But I'm hoping Paolo Banchero makes the team. I want to see him in the All-Star game. Yeah, I feel like he's one of them players that's that can be up there with the rest of the best young. So that's my guy for the East.
I think right now he is 4th in voting for the front court. I honestly think the first 4 are probably good. Giannis, Tatum, Towns, Banchero. I think those are all pretty good. I think for the guards, you have guys like Brunson and Dame and Donovan that all definitely should be there. It's where you look at the back end. I think Cade Cunningham and Tyler Hero are the ones that I want to see in that back end. Cade Cunningham has definitely deserved it this year. He's been playing out of his mind. They're a playoff team. Tyler Hero
Yeah,
is playing out of his mind. The Heat usually get one. My guess is when voting is over, they'll probably be a playoff team. Right now, we're in the 9 seed. Think will probably be. I think we have the Jimmy Butler losing effect right now. One thing if you notice about the Heat always are playing really rough right before the trade deadline. It's always like usually it's because Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson are in so many trade rumors that their shooting goes into the gutter. Now
yeah,
it's like, what do we do with this Jimmy Butler guy who is throwing our games and who does not
yeah.
want to be here? And I think after that, and I think moving Bam to the 4 instead of the 5 will get him out of his funk. I think that's one to look at too. Now, I don't think Bam should be All Star this year. I think the only one who's deserving on the team right now is Tyler
Okay,
Hero.
they
Trey
end
Young's an
everything.
interesting one too.
Trey Young. Oh yeah, yeah. That
I
is
just
an
don't know if
intrigue.
they played. Let's
That's
see. No,
very
they're the
intriguing.
7 seed. They're the 7 seed. Yeah,
They're
I think.
intriguing because they're like the Giant Slayers. They knocked off the Celtics, I think, twice already.
Mm-hmm.
They beat the Cavs, or they beat one of them teams twice
Yeah, they
already.
beat
Beat
the Celtics. Yeah.
so they're like the Giant Slayers. They get
Mm-hmm.
up for the big games, but
They
all
got a
right,
good regular season coach too. It's interesting. You think their
right.
record would be better when you think of how good their coach is at the regular.
Jalen Johnson is a guy who
I
I really like.
That's another guy he probably should get. I can see him getting his first one. So
Yeah. To wrap everything up. Let's see. I done gave my dog chain, Norman Powell. Let's do a version of what happened to that boy. What happened to that boy, Laurie Marketing? That boy done fell off the face of the earth. A seventh round pick. He was on the Bulls. Hurt. Yeah, I get it. Okay, you're gonna be hurt. But then he had like somewhat of a breakout season in Utah. And now it's like you don't hear nothing. It's
mm.
like crickets from that whole team really. And Laurie Markkinen, like, what happened? Like,
uh,
what's going on? I mean, the team has a lot of young talent. I specifically like Keontae George, but at the same time, like, what happened to Laurie Markkinen?
I think they're tanking. I think they're intentionally tanking. They are
Yeah,
trying their best to get. They're trying their best.
yeah. That looks to be the only explanation because I mean, somebody got to be the worst team, but you looking at the roster and you like, well, how can y'all be this bad?
It's the Cooper
Keontae George,
flag.
you got Keontae George is good. Colin Sexton can score. We know Jordan Clarkson can score. And you got Patty Mills, the veteran. You got Walker Kessler, who is
Mm.
solid coming up. John Collins, I mean,
John
10
Collins has fallen off. It is
he
so
ever
sad
since he
to
got
say.
yeah, ever since he got posterized.
It's been over. They are
His confidence.
tanking for Cooper Flag. Have you seen Cooper Flag stats? He is leading Duke in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. 19.2 points, 8.1 rebounds, 4.1 assists,
You know
1.6
Utah.
steals,
You know
1.2
Utah.
blocks.
You know Utah want Cooper Flag, bro.
Utah definitely wants Cooper Flag. Boston would be. Boston would
Right.
probably consider trading at
Brown
least
and Tatum.
Jalen
Yep.
Brown and Derek White. I would
Yeah.
say for.
You trade Drew Holiday and Brown. All right.
I
Well,
would say what happened to that boy is a little personal. I would say it's Bam Adebayo. This new offense, Bam Adebayo has been struggling on offense. I don't understand where he's been. If we look at his, I think honestly, I think there's probably some real stuff with Jimmy because I think Jimmy didn't get the extension. They immediately gave Bam the extension. Right now, if we go and we look at Bam Adebayo's recent games, um,
It's got to be
talking
wearing
about
off.
6 points against San Antonio, 12 points against Portland, 10 points against the Lakers, 13 points against Portland. He has been very quiet. Right now, he's averaging 15.6 points. He's still doing all the other stuff 9.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, great defense. Um, Shooting out pretty decent from three. But yeah, I think we'll get a resurgence for him. But that's my what happened to that.
What happened to that boy?
Yep, yep.
All right. Is the first episode in the books?
Mm-hmm. Do we?
Awesome.
And I think so. I know you guys see on the agenda, bright versus gloomy futures. I
Oh,
think we'll move that to the next episode.
okay.
Unless you want to touch on it right now. I know we're over time, but if you want to touch on it, we can. Otherwise, I think we can move that to another episode.
Yeah, I want to dig into that one.
Mm-hmm.
Bright and gloomy futures. Okay, yeah.
That's where we'll
Yeah, let
kick
me
off
dig.
next time.
Yeah, let me dig into that one. That was a good
Yeah.
episode.
So we hope you guys like the season ticket. Uh, it's time. It's time to get your seats. Get your seats at the season ticket. We got courtside. We got the ones up in the rafters. We got them all. So come here, enjoy the show.
Yeah, we're just gonna be analyzing, talking about, how we see things from our perspective, how some of these knucklehead GMs, in our opinion, bonehead moves they're making, and what we think about, these players and how these teams are constructed. So we appreciate y'all coming along for the ride.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. And then follow us on YouTube and our other social media platforms.